the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sarah Pion podcast. I'm Sarah Pion, your host, and today we are in the beautiful hills of Humboldt at Moonmade Farms, and it's harvest. And I wish that you all were here with us to just see all of the beauty, not only out the window where I'm looking, but what we have at the table here. So I'm sitting here with Tina Gordon, one of my favorite people. And if you have not heard of Tina on Moonmade Farms, you need to get out in California and do a little discovering and look her up online too. She's done so much amazing work with the beauty of sun-grown, what she grows with her flowers. She has numerous awards, and she is a true steward of the plant. So welcome, Tina. Thank you for having us here today. It's just so good to be spending time with you.
Thank you for being here, Sarah. I love it when you visit. I love it when you visit because I know how much you love the plant. I know how much you love this land and everything that you've done for people and for this plant. It's the work that the plant's calling us to do. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
Well, and that's, it's funny because before we met, I just remember hearing about you and seeing what you were doing. And I was like, oh, we have to meet. Because one of the beautiful things, in a lot of the episodes, we've been talking about the fact that, this is very trying times. And there have been some people who have come into, I always hate saying industry because we've been doing this since it was a movement. But there have been people who are coming and aren't here because of the love of the plant. But the fact that we get to connect and there are other people in our community that have the same heart and the same passion for what we do, that's when I'm always reminded of what we're here for and how much this is all worth it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't feel like there's another option,
No.
Like as we're sitting here and we're smelling all these different jars of flower and the flower's just been harvested. It's just drying, coming off the lines and starting to cure. And I smell this flower and there's absolutely no choice.
Yeah.
I need to grow mom's weed. Not only this year and last year and the year before, it's going to happen next year and the year after that and the year after that. And do you know this one, mom's weed? Huckleberry Hill Farms.
Oh,
genetic.
I've heard of it, but tell me about it. I'm going to smell this
Delicious.
jar.
It's just like this delicious like
wow.
Paradise Punch crossed with SFVOG.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Yes, SFVOG.
I do love an SFVOG.
No, I'm wrong. This is Paradise Punch crossed with Lemon OG. And you can smell that lemon in there underneath, yeah?
Yeah, but you know what the top note I'm getting is?
What?
Caramel.
Caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I smell sweet tarts. And isn't this fascinating? Like,
Yeah.
I love smelling flower. Okay, check this out. What does this smell like? This is Hella Jelly. And the Hella Jelly was a pleasure to grow, by the way.
Now I have to sniff the back of my hand so that I'm not still smelling mom's weed. Let's see. Oh, wow. That is like jelly. That's like, it's so fruity.
Like sharp and berry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I want that on my toast.
Yeah, you should have this on your toast.
Right?
Yeah, it'll get toasted. I mean, this is the thing that's also fascinating about this plant and about this plant as a teacher and you as an educator and a guide. This plant is also an educator and a guide.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things I've been tuning into this year is like, well, Hella Jelly really declared early. She was like, I'm going to finish first.
When did she finish?
She finished in like the last week of September.
Oh.
And so that's why she's like ready to go.
Yeah.
And first cut last week of September. And so, I think that what's going to happen is Hella Jelly is going to be first out the gate. And so with our reserve line, Hella Jelly is going to be one of the first represented. And so in November, she's going to be out there up front and center.
That's awesome. Now, when you're starting to bring all the harvest to the world, are you going to be having any special activations or anything like that to kind of get people excited about the harvest?
That's a great question. I mean, every October is Croptober, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of excitement around it. There's a lot of buzz around it. The reality is that we're actually harvesting now.
Mhm.
You know, so we've had a gorgeous October. It's going to be an amazing year for sun-grown. And I'm sure you've been seeing that all around the Emerald Triangle, like how gorgeous everyone's farm looks and the flower and the expressions, right?
Yes.
It's like we are so blessed with weather right now. And today is October 19th. We just had the Hunter's Moon.
And it was
super moon,
gorgeous. Oh my God.
brightest moon of the year
Yeah.
on the 17th. And then, you know, it was like a week before that, we had equinox, right? And so that's when things just like flip really quickly, is those two like power dates over a full season. You know, autumnal equinox, fall equinox, followed up by a supermoon.
Yeah.
And all of the flowers just like finishing very rapidly.
Okay. So thinking about that, you know, as human beings in our everyday lives, we've kind of lost not only touch with ourselves, but nature and everything that's going on, because we just keep on keeping on, especially in this capitalist society that we're in, where we're like, you got to work, you got to look at your social media, you get caught up in like all the things, and you forget about the fact that nature is continuing, the seasons are continuing. And do you feel that since you've become a grower, it's been a call to be more in touch with nature and the things that are constantly moving us, whether we like it or not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I attribute this plant to being my teacher and teaching me. Truly, it was like a revelation to open up to the outside world, like the natural world. And it was only through growing this plant that I was able to open my eyes to that and my consciousness to that, despite the fact that, like, I grew up running around Golden Gate Park. It was like this cool park. I know every little pocket of that park, right? And I went to school in Santa Cruz for some years on and off, but I never really explored the redwoods. Never went hiking, didn't really go to the beach very often. I've just never been like an outdoorsy person, other than like those early years exploring every little nook and cranny of Golden Gate Park, which was a lot of adventures as a small child, you know?
Yeah.
But into my adulthood, when I was like playing rock and roll and really into underground art and the underground scene, it's like it was just from one interior space to the next, and like riding around on a bike to go to parties or clubs or the recording studio or being on tour, you know? But I just wasn't interested in the natural world. And then cultivating this plant, the first season I did from seed to full expression, I just wanted to check it out, you know? I actually came up here to make a film about Joni. And so it was, you know, the amazing woman who used to live in this house.
Right. Also a drummer.
Also a drummer. And so I was making this documentary, and during that period of time was exposed to full season cultivation, and it was completely life-changing. Like never before had I been interested in growing plants. I didn't have house plants or anything. And growing this plant from seed to full expression and watching it become this like 14-foot diva, I totally fell in love with the plant.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happened. Is I started leaning into my inherent intelligence, like my intuition. And that's how I learned how to cultivate this plant, is through intuition and paying attention to the natural surroundings. And so it's informed everything. At this point, it's like my life philosophy.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that a common thread in every conversation I've had with people who are here because of the actual love of the plant and what we do, and the fact that it's a social movement, it's a social justice movement, it's a wellness movement, it's a spiritual thing. Intuition comes into play so much. That's what I always hear, that people have this intuitive draw to certain things with it. And that is when I see the most beautiful flowers being cultivated. And tell us a little bit more. I mean, I forgot to say welcome back, because we did do an episode a few years ago.
It's so good to be back. What's it been, 3 years?
I think it has been 3 years.
Yeah.
But so we have a lot more listeners than we did back then, because that was when we were a little baby podcast. So let's talk a little bit about Moonmade Farms, how you came up with the name, and also just like why you call it that. And talking about just like the essence of the plant and what calls to you around it.
Well, as I started becoming aware of this plant and this plant's natural environment and where this plant thrives, and that was outside. This is Southern Humboldt County. And I started tuning into when does the sun rise? When does the sun set? When does the moon rise? When does the moon set? Where does the moon rise and where does the moon set? And something that I became aware of was the cycle, right? And also very specifically, how bright the night sky is and all of those subtleties. And so when I started learning about this plant, and, I was also exposed to indoor for the first couple of years that I was up here, but it didn't resonate for me at all. And it was like lights on for 18 hours or 24 hours a day, then lights off, So say lights on for 18 hours a day and then lights off. And absolutely no subtleties.
Right.
And you step outside into the natural world and it's like, well, this is a photosensitive plant. So one night there was an incredibly huge, like blue moon. And I'm woken up at like 3 a.m. and I step outside and I go on a walk and I'm walking around the plants and I was like, how are the plants reacting to this incredible light right now? This is a photosensitive plant.
Yeah.
So I went back inside and I looked up farming by the moon and found lunar farming. And so this is the schedule I've been using ever since. And also really tapping into the fact that this is an ancient plant that predates us on the planet by thousands of years.
And I mean, they often think that as far as human beings cultivating plants, that we have one of the oldest symbiotic relationships with cannabis as well.
Doesn't it make sense that this plant is where humans are? And humans are where this plant is. And so we've had this symbiotic relationship, and it's something that people have carried the seeds to this plant just everywhere, all around the globe. And in non-Western cultures, this plant is found on every continent. And it's so the people's plant. And I feel like the people's plant is sun-grown, and so this is kind of something that I'm really leaning into right now is the fact that there's so little access to organic sun-grown. And in California, in the California market, like, why is that? What's the reason for that? I heard something really brilliant the other day. It was just like a little clip of something, probably on social media. And it was somebody saying, you go into a health food store, you go into a food store, right? Go into a grocery store and there's a health food section. Well, what is the rest of the food?
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. And who's drawn to the health food and who is, who has practices where they're not even aware of that. But when that aha moment happens, when somebody has that, I always like to say, like, that tomato from the farmer's market, and then, you're somewhere where you don't have access to that, or you get your tomatoes in the middle of the winter, like how different that is because of the cultivation techniques differing. And also, I mean, let's be honest, like the care.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is a plant that is highly sensitive in so many ways. And I think that the way you can really kind of reflect that or examine that, the way that this plant demonstrates how sensitive it is by the way people react to it.
Yeah. I
mean, if you and I, for instance, smell any one of these flowers, even remotely differently, that's because our sensory perception is going to be different. Your sensory perception is different than mine, right? The way that you react to this flower when you smoke this flower is likely going to be different than me.
Yeah, because we're walking chemistry experiments. There was, when I was still working behind the bar, there was a very popular land race, red Congolese. And I would always tell people that it was one of those plants that really illustrated the fact that people are so different, because if you liked the aroma of it, you were going to enjoy the smoke. And I used to tell people, but if you're not into it, don't even talk yourself into it. Somebody who really enjoys this, every person that their body loved it were like, I can't get enough of this aroma. almost everybody else was like, this smells like, somebody said it to me once, it smells like damp smoker's lung. I'm like, okay, so don't smoke that.
Maybe don't roll that one up.
That's probably not for you. But the people who are like, oh, I love it. And then they'd bring up more positive notes like, oh, it's got this cheesiness to it. And, all these different things that they would come up with that would be like pleasant aromas. And a lot of those people were people who liked more uplifting plants and would use them before they went to the gym or something like that. Like, that's how polarizing these can be in so many ways.
The intelligence that your senses have and hold for you and your own health and wellness is particular to you, right?
Right.
And so being able to lean into that, and this is one of the reasons you might notice that I have numbered jars.
Yeah.
So all of these lids we're sitting in front of here, all these jars have lids that have different numbers. And it's because I don't want someone to approach the jars with a preconceived notion of what the flower looks like. I want someone to be able to be like, and this is particularly important, I think, with mixed ratios. And so, for instance,
oh, wow. This one
what
here.
do you get from that?
There's definitely a sweetness and some citrus as well.
So does that appeal to your body?
It does.
Yeah.
Like I find it's like when with an aroma like this, it's like you just want to keep sticking your nose in the jar.
Well, so this is a 2-to-1 CBD to THC. This is Sapphire Sue.
Okay, and there you go.
Bred by BioVortex by Jesse Dodd. And this is a staple. And what I love about this flower so much is that whenever I pass these jars around and someone tells me they like, I ask them, how do you purchase cannabis? Or like, how do you procure cannabis? What are your choices based upon? And they're like, usually just, THC percentage or whatever that is, right? And when I watch someone's eyes light up after they smell the Sapphire Sue 2-to-1 CBD to THC jar, I'm like, you might want to smoke that.
That's it. Well, and as a matter of fact, I love CBD ratios, and a 2-to-1 is one of my favorites. And I do have Sapphire Sue at home that I mix with other flowers as well. But, one of the things that I think consumers miss out on is that they don't really get to experience the aromas of the flowers before they purchase. Sure, some places after COVID have now brought back the scent jars, but even before that, those jars they lose a lot of their aroma very quickly. And for you consumers out there who have scent jars, I'm going to tell you about my pet peeve. Don't shake the jar like you're playing Yahtzee, because it's like all those trichomes end up on the bottom, and then people look at the jar and they're like, this is what I'm buying, this shank looking flower. It's like, well, no, this is abused flower.
The poor flower.
Yeah, you don't have to shake it up just to get the aroma. Just breathe.
Well, and I think what you're talking about here is levels of disconnection.
Yeah.
Which is really the antithesis of what this plant has to offer, which is connection.
Yeah.
And deep connection. And this plant can help us connect to ourselves, to others, to the land, to systems. Like it's really about integrating all of these systems together. Building network, building an ecosystem, the interrelatedness and interconnectedness of all things. And this plant taught me that. Cultivating this plant taught me that, not even smoking it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love smoking this plant and I have like my own relationship to that. But it's like, in growing this plant and cultivating it, what does this plant respond to?
Right.
Right. And so Southern Humboldt, and it's kind of like a classic place. It's we're at the heart of the Emerald Triangle, like where the 3 counties meet. Right.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I can point to you like over this little hill exactly where that is. Right. And you start to tune into and attenuate yourself to the environment. It's like, this is south facing right out the window here. Right. I can watch the arc of the sun from east to west. And on a full moon night, the same very thing. But what I was going to say about that is that the expression of these plants is directly related to the number of variables they experience every single day and night.
Yeah. And
so that's going to create these robust, complex profiles that you may not find in an indoor environment. And so whereas in an indoor environment, what you're going to see is a very, very frosty flower. because it's like a very specific light spectrum that's going to render that effect.
Give the gift that everyone will remember this holiday season, the 12 J's of Christmas gift box. This limited edition collection features 12 premium pre-rolls from 12 sun-grown farms in Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity counties. It's the ultimate gift for craft cannabis lovers and a way to support small farmers in the Emerald Triangle. Hurry, quantities are limited. Reserve yours now at emeraldtrianglecraft.com. Well, it's like I remember going into a grow, like opening the door, and it's like, oh, like the light of God. It's like the sun doesn't, that's not what you experience in nature, like that crazy ass bright light that you see in an indoor environment.
Yeah, well, that doesn't change. That doesn't shift. And depending upon the tone and the quality of that light, that is the plant's entire lifetime. And so I always ask people to, and I get accused of anthropomorphizing, which I do constantly. And I'm a firm believer in learning this way because it's like, imagine you're the plant. And so if we're talking about those levels of disconnection as opposed to connection and being able to have access to and purchase your cannabis, we're talking about like this plant coming from a place like where we are, and it exchanges hands many times before it finally reaches the consumer's like bong or pipe or joint that they roll.
Right. Yeah.
And if we could bridge the gap a little bit, and so that people would ask, where is this flower from? And who grew this flower? What was that environment like? That would bring them a lot closer and solve for that consciousness gap.
Yes.
But there's also that operational gap, the supply chain gap.
Absolutely. Because when you're looking at outdoor craft grown cannabis, or, I know there are some craft growers that do mix light too, it's more nuanced. And, I think that your average consumer has become very disconnected with, cannabis as a plant because they see it as a consumer packaged product, even more so since we've gotten into legalization and gotten away from the deli style, weighing, which even then people were still like, why is my favorite flower out? It's like, well, it's not something that can just be made in a factory and sent to us. So it's a really interesting thing. And also, like with craft farmers, the one thing I keep hearing over and over again is that amongst you all, it's not a competition. People are sharing genetics. People are like, hey, let me see what my genetics do on your property with, all the your environment is so different than mine, and sharing those experiences and really deepening your understanding of what you're doing.
Well, I think that most small craft cultivators approach this as art.
Yeah.
It's like full heart and soul and expression of like what they're doing on a daily basis. It takes like full dedication and devotion to go through an outdoor season. And it's a white knuckler. Like it's an exciting ride,
Yeah.
Because the reality is we are not in control. We're responding to who is in control, which is nature.
Yeah.
And so that's the big lesson. That's like some of the most important, I think, teachings from this plant. And so in order to accept not being in control, it means being responsive. It means tuning in. It means using your intuition. It means evaluating based upon your observations. And that's all of your senses. I always encourage people like tune in with all of your senses, like smell the plant, touch the plant, look at the plant, like all of it. And not only with the plant, with the soil, with the water, with all of the inputs. What does the air quality feel like? What does the air smell like where this plant was grown?
Yeah. Well, what? I noticed too that every farm that we've gone to is different. And it really, it not only reflects the environment that it's in, but also the farmer themselves. And it's been fascinating to see because everyone we visited has had so much love for what they do. So it's like, it's not a value judgment. It's just an observation of like how people find their way to cultivating in a manner that not only resonates for the plant, but also very much reflects who they are.
Oh yeah, it's a signature.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever have the opportunity to smell like everything that's grown on one farm, then you go to another farm and you smell everything there. And what's fascinating is when you can compare like the same genetic grown on multiple farms, and what you start smelling is the undertone. You start smelling the signature. And that could be like the mycelium. It could be like the microbiology, but it's like, I think of it as more of like the spirit.
Yeah.
It's like this undertone that's just like present in everything from each farm. And that signature for people to like, so say someone really tunes in with like Full Moon Farms or Huckleberry Hill Farms or Moon Made Farms, whoever that is. And then they just kind of want to try everything because something about that spirit is working for them.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's how you get your true blue fans. Like it's funny because Jeff has a Full Moon Farms t-shirt and a Huckleberry Hill t-shirt, and we'll go out and he'll be wearing one of them and people will be like, oh, are you part of that? And he'll be like, no, I just love them.
It's so great. It's like bands. I mean, when you listen to a band and they have a signature sound, and no matter what they play or what kind of music, like what genre they're playing, that signature sound is still there.
Yeah. It's
the same thing with cultivating this plant. And it's like, it's that intimate, and it's, I think, so similar, So I've started calling this an art farm instead of a pot farm.
I love that. Well, Jeff is a prog rock head, so I wonder how the intersection between that and the cannabis that he likes works.
Totally. Well, and for some people, it's like, that creativity. So I love a creative effect, right? I love to drop into a riff. And so if I smoke something and every time I smoke it, I have that creative impulse, I love that. Yeah. As opposed to some people, like I love asking people, what's your intended effect? Like what experience are you seeking from smoking flower? And at least half the time I hear, I just want to kind of tune out or chill out or turn it off after a long day. Whereas I feel the opposite. I'm looking for enlightenment. Recently I described it as like the last gift before like unwinding into the night. It's like opening this little gift. It's like taking a couple hits and having a shift in consciousness, a perspective shift that is generally guided by creativity, and something comes from that. And to be able to just like open that channel and to be able to have that experience truly feels like a gift. I love it so much, And so when I ask people, well, how do you feel about like getting creative when you smoke? Or do you want to be functional or do things or like activate, as opposed to deactivate? Do you want to get closer to something? Another word for that is associate. Yeah. And so do you want to feel associative and associated or disassociative? And I'm hella like sensitive to indoor. And if I smoke indoor, I feel disassociative. Like even the most beautiful living soil indoor, and huge respect for the folks that are doing like organic indoor.
That's not easy.
That is not easy. That's a tall order. And so like, folks like Moon Valley or Snowtill, I mean, there's surprise, like there's some really good players out there, but it's just like, I don't receive benefit from it.
Yeah.
And some people do, and wonderful. That's great for them.
Absolutely. And it's also wonderful for areas where there isn't access to sun-grown, because since we don't have interstate commerce, these places like Alaska, Arizona, and I know I keep talking about Arizona. I'm not picking on you, Arizona. I love you. But there's, because of the environment, there isn't an option other than to go indoor. So to have people like Snowtill in California, like leading the way with how they cultivate indoors, like being able to, I know sometimes on the podcast, you guys listening out there, you might think that I'm bagging on indoor, but it's not. It's about indoor cultivations that aren't thoughtful, that aren't taking these things into consideration. So, if you do have a place where you only have access to indoor or your indoor works for you, it's about being mindful of how that indoor cannabis is cultivated. But when we are looking at sun grown, it is so nuanced. It is the spectrum of feel is there's just so much more to that. In many ways, I feel like there's just a much more deeper reaction. And it's gotten a bad rap because back in the day when we would look at sun-grown cannabis, and when I went to go to Huckleberry Hill Farms, Johnny was saying, a lot of the stuff that you thought was indoor back in the day was actually just really beautiful, well-grown outdoor. And kind of the larvae stuff that we would look at as outdoor was just, it's kind of like not necessarily the best grown flowers. And that's why it's gotten such a bad rap through the years. Or the fact that people look at, cost as a way of talking about value. A lot of sun-grown cannabis in the past, not all, was less expensive. And I would always explain to people when I was behind the bar, that's because PG&E isn't coming into the picture. The overhead is a little bit lower. But if we're looking at craftsmanship, sun-grown should actually be more expensive than indoor.
Well, if you look at any art form, I think it's the same way. I mean, what I've been, one of the things that I love to share with folks is that there's so little access to organic sun-grown right now. However, you can get farm to table at fast food prices while folks are getting fast food at farm to table prices right now. I mean, the highest priced eighth is going to be an indoor eighth. And it's going to be twice as expensive as like the finest sun-grown you can find on the market. Mm-hmm. And so what I would love to see, and this isn't for myself, and this isn't for the other craft farmers, even though I would love to see them appreciated for their work, is I would love to see access, because I don't feel that the consumer is getting what they deserve, which is access.
Right.
And I think for a lot of folks who could really benefit from organic sun-grown, they don't have the opportunity to find it. And so they end up likely having for them what may be a compromised experience, or an experience that is not what could be truly like a life-changing experience for them. And one that they could seek out. Everyone's different. For some people, it's like, I meet a lot of daily smokers who are just like sun-grown only or indoor only. And to get a little bit more clear, a little bit more nuanced about that, there's a lot of sun-grown, I think, that's grown for yield, that's not necessarily grown with love and intention, mm-hmm. that is that may not be the organic sun-grown I'm talking about.
Right. Right. It's important to have that conversation too.
And also, and that's not to say that, like, there are probably a lot of people that could benefit from that as well.
Right.
Some people need a wash of cannabinoids,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like everyone's different. But I would have to say this. It's kind of like in terms of like the craft, right? And the farm to table concept. It's like a home cooked meal. It's like a healthy home cooked meal as opposed to getting some fast food. And it's also kind of like like a glass of fresh squeezed organic orange juice compared to a glass of Tang or like Sunny Delight. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh no, I love Sunny D.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that works for you, awesome. But I think that you should also be able to get like the fresh squeezed orange juice. And so, you were talking about the context of, is this an industry? Is it a movement? A lot of us have been here since before it was an industry and it was a movement. Mm-hmm. And even in the medical days, it was just like there was so much more. There was so much more one-to-one. It was a much more intimate experience where there was an exchange where somebody could find out so much about that flower they were ingesting, right?
Right.
Or whatever products. So what's happened, it feels like truly, is it's gone to not only something that's an industrial model, it's like straight gas station. Mm-hmm. It truly feels like we're talking Doritos and Coca-Cola. Like we have gone to consumer packaged goods that are so readily available and so imprinted so that people are getting tuned into name brands that are ubiquitous, like you can find them everywhere. But are those the products that are most going to serve people?
Right. And how do, and with with people running around rushing for a moment day to day and not being truly in touch with their bodies and their minds, because most of us spend a lot of time on autopilot just because you got to get through the day and your life and take care of business no matter how you feel. But that also lends itself to the lack of reflection on what it is that you're looking for in your experience or how you're feeling and you need relief. And being able to sit back and take a breath and think about that takes a little bit of coaching when you're looking at cannabis from like a retail standpoint. And we've gone deep into formula retail because we have people who have come into this industry without any knowledge or even interest in it. And they're like, weed sells itself. And it's a recipe for disaster because, yes, you'll have some educated consumers that know what they want, but they could also be turned on to new things. And then you'll have people who come in and they are not sure what they want, but they have had conversations with people about their experiences and they want to have something, and it's a satisfying experience. And so there has to be, one of the things I used to do when I trained people in dispensaries was teaching them about how to use inquiry to get people to figure out what they want, because we often know more about ourselves than we give ourselves credit for. And using that as a tool to make recommendations to have satisfying, successful outcomes. And now that we're getting into this formula retail and this old trope of weed sells itself, and then they're like, well, what's happening? Why are our sales not as high? Oh, it's the taxes. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And it's like, yes, and it's the fact that it's a very intimate, personal, I dare say, emotional experience, working with something that can either cause euphoria or relief. And if you're not looking at it that way, you're missing out on a whole swath of the public that could be benefiting for wellness, much less, even if someone's, consuming just to kick back, that is wellness.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and we're also talking about like the ability to have a choice as a consumer, right? Like, can you imagine, this is so often compared to like wine or craft beer, but I actually think it is that much more important than wine, craft beer, or even organic food, I've got to say, because this is our consciousness. Yeah. This is like consciousness and spirit. It's like, isn't that I just feel like it's the most precious thing. And so imagine going into a place and thinking like, having this preconceived notion that you're going to have a nutritious meal. And do you ask the question, how were these chickens raised? Right. Or were these carrots grown in a warehouse? Or was this the grapes that this wine is from? Were those grapes grown in a warehouse? Oh, how about those olives? Were those olives grown in a warehouse? And like, would you choose to have a meal that was grown in a warehouse? Where all of these like natural products are born out of or are grown in a simulated environment. Right. And then flash back to cannabis. And why is it that that's the industry standard? And it's actually gotten to be more of the industry standard, more so.
Elevate your brand with iSpire, the global leader in vape technology with over 1,000 patents worldwide. Our innovative iSpire 1 simplifies your process with self-sealing hardware and automated filling. No capping, no hassle. For brands ready to go to market, our iSpire signature devices are for premium, customizable solutions. And as proud members of NCAA, NORML, the Origins Council, and the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, iSpire is committed to advocacy and social justice. Learn more today at getispire.com.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that originated from the fact that it had to be hidden, right? I mean, and now that we're out of that, we need to get our regulators to understand, because I mean, there are some areas where outdoor cannabis isn't allowed because of aromas or what they, think of as access to the public or what have you. But that's not true. It's like we've evolved beyond that. We are in a time of legalization. We should be able to have sun-grown cannabis, and it just seems it seems like a very cold environment. It should only be done out of necessity.
I mean, in this legal era, we have much less access to sun-grown. much less access to organic sun-grown. And why is that? And is it possible that that's because of the industry? Is it possible that that's because of like who is propping it up, who is supporting it, who's paying for it, who's paying for those regulations, who has the lobbying dollars? And so what we're getting for the public, I mean, is it, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is a public health issue. And what is reaching the consumer, especially now that it's legal and there's more access than ever before, but less of what could potentially really benefit people and benefit these communities.
Yeah.
You know, so it's downline from there. It's like, and so if people are seeking connection, and it feels so much like so many people are seeking connection right now, and also seeking relief from trauma.
Yes.
Whether that's personal trauma, generational trauma, but there's a lot of suffering in the world. And so people are looking for like a solution to this, and connection and association, being associative, is such an essential part of that. However, we're providing something that is disassociative, I think, for people, or that really is just knocking folks out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I look at it as, and we've talked about this, but getting in touch with the feminine. And when we were talking earlier, you were saying, you know, about the fact that, you know, it is a feminine plant. I mean, the flowers that we consume are from the females. And I always would joke, like when I would do because, you know, I am no cultivator by any stretch of the imagination, but I would grow some plants at home, and I would, you know, when the males would come, I would just juice them. And I feel like I look at Jeff, I'd be like, we juice the males. And he's like, oh God, you're so scary.
I mean, this is about plant sex. Like people, you know, and this is about seduction.
Yeah.
This is about these plants being like sticky, sweet, and covered in aroma and this glorious frosting that is attracting that pollen, right? And this is what's getting us high.
Yeah.
Right? It's the mating ritual. It's like everything that this plant is excreting in order to reproduce, that's getting us high.
Right.
Like that is some life essence, you know?
It is.
And when you ask about, so like why Moon Made Farms, right? So when I really discovered the moon cycle and how much the moon cycle has to do with this plant being cultivated outside, you know, it also is, as we're talking about, probably the most powerful plant on the planet. Expressing in the female expression is the expression that gets us high, right? And the moon in so many cultures is symbolic of the feminine.
Yes.
And so all of it to me is just like, it's all about the night cycle and the moon. Like that's the great differentiator.
Yeah. And
that's why full season sun-grown, I think, is just absolutely the most powerful plant. And so what's happening when someone's ingesting this incredibly highly charged plant that's full of feminine energy? You know, and is it possible that what we're doing is we're encouraging things like intimacy, connection, empathy, consideration, nurturing? We're somehow, this plant is like helping, like food tastes better. Inquiries become more expansive. Intimacy becomes that much more enjoyable. You know, all of our physical senses awaken. And is it possible that that is about feminizing consciousness?
I think so, especially when you're looking at, I think about also, you know, the medicinal applications, and we've done some experimentation with, you know, different types of cannabis. And when you're looking at something that has like, that's an isolated extraction versus a full spectrum extraction from sun-grown flowers, and the effectiveness for things like symptom management, or if you consider, you know, people who have gone to war and come back with PTSD, and we're showing with studies that cannabis is an amazing way to help create balance and heal from that. And isn't that part of the feminine energy and the therapeutic value of veterans getting their hands in the soil and helping be part of the cultivation process? Isn't that about getting in touch with your feminine energy and really like having that healing, soothing. I mean, not, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys out there that are very in touch with both sides of themselves that are healers and very like warm, wonderful, welcoming people. But it's when we get into just like,
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And I think that it's really about, because those masculine and feminine forces, I think, embody all of us.
Right.
Right. But what is it that culturally?
So shifting a little, let's talk about cure. Last night, Jeff and I were on our way back from one of our friends' farms, and they had been talking about burping the jars and the cure. And so he had a lot of questions for me about that. And I was telling him, there's the drying process, but then the cure is what really brings out everything that's wonderful about the cannabis experience. And I'm wondering if you would get into more of that for our listeners so they understand the difference between drying and curing, and also the fact that, there are many different lengths of the curing process. Sometimes there's a quicker cure, there are vintage cures, there's a lot of misconceptions about older cannabis, and, sometimes that's actually an amazing smoke. I'm a fan of a good vintage cure, but if you could demystify some of that for our listeners.
I'm a big fan of the long cure. I mean, more than anything else, it's a matter of what the flower is asking you to do. Like, when is the right time for someone to smoke that flower? And in some situations, it's over time, and that flower will kind of like be really consistent throughout a season. And so, for instance, say you have a Queen Cola and you alone want to smoke it. That's for Sarah, right? And say there's about 12 buds on there. And you break one off in January and then you vacuum seal, and then you break one off in February and you vacuum seal. You might find that over the course of that year, that flower may change month to month. And also you may change because you're going to change from beginning to end of a year. And so I think that also has something to do with it. Like, when is the right time of the season for that flower, right? And so one of our first reserves this year, Hella Jelly, I did, there was very little curing happening with this flower. Like, I've definitely burped it. And for anyone out there who hasn't burped before, that basically just means like you have your flower stored in either, say, a bag or a glass jar, and you have it covered. So you have a lid on it, or you've squeezed all of the air out of a bag, right? And so what you do when you're burping is you open that jar, you open that bag, and you let the air exchange. And what happens in that situation is it may carry off some of the moisture that's trapped in that bag, definitely chlorophyll. And so you're kind of off-gassing the plant. And at a certain point, for some of the flowers, it's like February or March is the exact time to smoke that flower. And for other flowers, it's a longer cure. It's like May, June. And for other flowers, for instance, we grew grape fog last year, and I think grape fog peaked out this year in September.
Okay, so when did you harvest that flower?
We harvested that flower last October.
So it's almost a year cure.
Almost a year cure. And you know what the old timers used to say? They used to say, never smoke your pot for 6 months.
I also remember hearing about people saying that they buried their jars.
That's right. Well, that's because it's cool and consistent. So a cool, consistent environment is great. Dry, cool, consistent, dark. Not unlike a cellar.
I was just going to say, like an old school root cellar.
Like a root cellar.
Yeah.
And it's also like, what is wine like? And so it's very similar. And perhaps that reason why. So let's go into this a little bit deeper. And what I'm holding in my hand here, I'm going to hold a wet cola that's just been cut, and then a dry one that's been through drying and some curing. This is just like room curing. And so what I'm going to do is flip these over, and I'm going to pass these off to Sarah. And so hold on to the wet one and hold on to the dry one. And what are you feeling?
Oh, the wet one is a lot heavier. You can tell that there's a lot more moisture in that because that contributes to the weight. And
how about the color?
Well, the fresh one is much more vibrant green. And this other one, the green has started to fade, and you're really starting to see like the tendrils are darkening for sure.
And so like the pistils,
Mm-hmm.
right? The little hairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the colors, you watch the colors shift, and that's moisture loss. And that's also chlorophyll loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've definitely smoked weed like a year after harvest that's starting to brown out, and it's perfect. It's like sometimes for instance, grape fog this season, I didn't even release publicly. That is like my personal use. I share it with family and friends. And the color is just not quite what the market is supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like this very, it's a very narrow margin of preference that I think people are being that is being delivered to people. And so I would love to see more exploration around this, more exploration around like long cure, vintage cure. So for instance, one of the other things that I love to do is to let the plant guide, right? Let the flower guide. Like when is the flower best for being consumed? And what is the world going to get out of that? What are people going to get out of that flower that time of year?
Yeah.
Right. And so like Hawaiian Fanta, this one right here, that's dry. This is going to be released in December. And I think it'll be a wonderful, like uplifting and also somewhat relaxing, not too intense. Great for socializing, good for holidays. At another time in January or February, I like to release something that is a little bit more going into like a dormant state, kind of a dormancy and winter and reflection. And so whereas there's always a range, it's just like, what is the most appropriate time, And I mean, it also really speaks to what is the purpose of that flower.
Right.
And that's kind of the life force thing.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I've noticed is now the flower that's fresher, the aroma is different too. Like
Very different.
Yeah, very different. And what's happening with that? I mean, for our listeners trying to understand that when you have less chlorophyll in the plant and it's starting to age, you get a lot of the other components, but you also have to be careful about storage because of how you mentioned before, how volatile those terpenes are.
And this is a good point, and I think that the best way the best demonstration of fresh terpenes is fresh frozen. And so fresh frozen terpenes, and you might notice in my experience, I'll smell all of this amazing fresh frozen hash, and it's really beautiful. And for people who love fresh frozen, a big part of that is the smell.
Yeah.
And that effect of those terpenes, because terpenes are highly volatile and some more volatile than others. And so one of the reasons why you might see that sun-grown and a long-cured sun-grown or even sun-grown that say just like sits out on a table. I've done this test. I love doing this test where I just like leave buds out on my bar, right? And I come back to them every week or so and I smell them, give them a little squeeze, smell them. And there's some where the terpenes are volatile and I won't get any nose out of that after, a couple, say 3 months. And others all the year through.
Wow.
And so that depends on the terpene profile. Some terpenes are, let's say, heavier or less volatile, and some are lighter or more volatile. And some people are more attracted to some range of like those terpenes than others. Some people love terpinolene. Some people love myrcene. Some people love beta-caryophyllene. Some people love what's the one? The lavender terpene is
linalool.
Linalool.
Yeah.
Linalool. And that's more of a specific kind of a specified terpene and experience, right? Whereas beta-caryophyllene and limonene is like dominating 65% of the market right now.
Right. And then there's, when we get into things like hash making, there's a terpene that they discovered the other year, and I might be totally murdering the pronunciation, but I think it's called hashinine, because there are these aromas that come out of that process.
Yes. I mean, this was one of the fascinating things that came out of the study with Columbia University chemistry professor Colin Nuckols, which is that what we're seeing is that the profiles, and what I love about working with someone like Nuckols is that Columbia University has incredible equipment. And so whereas we're all required to do these COAs, the certificate of approval, we're really limited in what we can test for.
Right.
We're only going to see what we're testing for. However, it's like you go to this, you get access to this incredibly sophisticated equipment, and you're seeing terpenes you didn't know existed because you're testing for them. But what we're seeing is that full sun-grown has a much broader terpene profile, more diversity, and different clusters than indoor, which makes a lot of sense.
It does. And that supports the experiences that people have had around sun-grown cannabis, whether they're experiencing it through a smoke or they're experiencing it incorporated into a cannabis product. And we're looking at the medicinal side. And, well, two things. From just the enjoyment of it, there's more subtleties. It's a more nuanced experience. But then when we're looking at medicinal use and symptom management, more people are successfully using products that are derived from sun-grown cannabis to alleviate some of the symptoms that they're working with.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that hash in this case is going to be the gateway to flower because a lot of people are learning about their preferences through hash and then are going to bring that to flower smoking, you know, if they're down with combustion. And so one of the, sorry, where was I? I'm trying to remember my thought here. We can cut that out, right? Let's see.
Yeah.
What was this? Oh. Okay. Entourage effect. So when we're talking about sun-grown and we're talking about a broad terpene and cannabinoid profile, that's entourage effect.
Yes.
And oftentimes I like to encourage people, if they haven't tried sun-grown, to try organic sun-grown, because what they might find is that they are high for longer. And it's a different kind of high. It's kind of an arc, as opposed to getting on a roller coaster and you're like, all of a sudden you're really elevated and you drop and you crash. Right?
And it doesn't necessarily have an extraordinarily high THC percentage in the lab reports either, which is further proof that THC is not the end-all be-all, because you can have a very euphoric experience on something that's lower in THC but has this really interesting terpene and cannabinoid profile.
I mean, there's so many cannabinoids out there, like the minor cannabinoids, right? There's so many out there. It's not just all about THC.
Right.
And for anyone who I ever talk to who's like, well, I don't smoke weed. Why is that? Well, it makes me anxious. I had a panic attack once. Or it just like, it makes me feel paranoid, right? And I ask, well, what did you smoke? And they're like, well, I don't know, you know? So here, like now that we have information and access, if you can find access to organic sun-grown, it's highly likely if you're someone who gets anxiety or paranoia or like a racing heart from smoking weed, it might be super chemi charged up, high THC percentage flower.
And that's what we would hear when people would be revisiting cannabis and saying to me, hey, Sarah, I used to enjoy cannabis. Now all this stuff seems so high octane and it's more than I can handle. And I always say to them, well, look to sun-grown cannabis, organic sun-grown cannabis, but also consider that maybe a CBD ratio is good for you. Like your 1-to-1s, your 2-to-1s, anywhere from 1-to-1 to 4-to-1 can be a really pleasant experience for people. And oftentimes they'll come back to me and they'll be like, that's what I remember. That's what I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I'm hearing the woodpecker knocking. This is how you know that we're out in the hills. There's this woodpecker that's hanging out outside of the house.
These pesky woodpeckers.
I love it.
I mean, I think that perhaps the most important thing about this flower and the thing to tune in about, it's like there's curing and there's long curing, there's vintage curing, and that's all super important. The reason why it's important is to really get the maximum benefit from this plant, it's to acknowledge the life force that went into it.
Right.
And so as a living plant, this plant is like, it's getting its life force from the planet, right? From the earth, from soil,
Mm-hmm.
from water, from living water,
Mm-hmm.
from the wind, from the air, from living wind, for living air, whoever's stewarding that plant and the land, like it's all contributing to the life force of this plant and the incredibly complex profile when this plant is grown outside full season. And then this plant is dried, the flower's dried. And when somebody smokes that flower, that's a continuation of that life force, now interpreted through that person who's just ingested it. And through that life force, that comes out of that person, and it's still life force. And so smoking is just the beginning of that second life. What happens after you smoke? Why do you smoke?
Right.
You know, what happens to Sarah? What happens to you when you smoke?
Well, it depends on what I smoke.
Yeah.
You know, for me, like I use cannabis during the day, and when I do, it's non-euphoric cannabinoids. But in the evening, when I'm done for the day and I'm kicking back, it's not about escaping anything, but it's about losing the unnecessary noise of the day so that I can concentrate on spending time with my husband, relaxing, working on a creative project, and just really like just divesting myself of all of the static from that day. So I'll choose something that's a little more relaxing. And a lot of times I'll choose something that has some CBD in it because I'm a huge fan of a 2-to-1 ratio. I tend to like fruitier flowers. You know, these are the things that I'm more drawn to.
And so that's that life force moving through you and affecting those who are around you,
Mm-hmm.
affecting those expressions that come through you, come out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a trip to see how much life this plant has in it.
Yeah, it is. And you know, it's a trip to see people's experiences with it and just how personal and emotional the experiences are. You know, we may not talk about that as much because I think we get more into like connoisseurship and, you know, we may talk about feel, but we don't talk about how the expectations around those experiences, you know, not only affect us physically, but how emotionally charged those experiences are too. And that's, you know, and I'm not like saying like traumatic experience. I'm just saying like that expectation for relief or relaxation or creativity and how that makes you feel when you are able to get to that place and you're using your favorite flower to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, the possibility, the potential in every single flower. I love to say that every bud is a gem.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine what's going to happen with every single one of these flowers when they're outside, when they come into full expression, they go into the dry room, and they come out of that dry room, we do a long cure, and then what happens when that hits someone's pipe? What
Right.
happens when they roll that flower up into a joint? Like what song comes out of them? What meal comes out of them? What conversation do they have? And that resonance in the world. And isn't that the whole point? What we're trying to do is help people feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all starts with how those flowers are treated.
That's right. And then how we treat those flowers and how those flowers treat us back.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. What are some parting thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
I want to encourage listeners truly to love themselves and to consider what they're putting into their bodies and to really be thoughtful about how they're consuming. Like, what is your desired effect? Why do you have a relationship with cannabis? Or why don't you? And how may that enhance your life? And to really set that intention when you're smoking and to be conscious of the incredible history of this plant and how it's tying you back to so many others throughout history who are using this plant perhaps for the same reasons that you are.
I love that. Yeah, every time we consume, we have a unique opportunity to ground and get in touch with ourselves. And it goes beyond that. It goes into the mindfulness of everything we put in our bodies creates a reaction. And if we can reflect on that.
I think that a lot of people, there's a lot of suffering right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of layered trauma, intergenerational trauma. Everyone's got some shit to work out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that this plant is flexible, so incredibly flexible, in fact, that there's something for everyone.
I agree. Our bodies are built for it. And whether we do well with something that creates euphoria or something non-euphoric that creates balance, it's all about creating that safe container for experimentation, getting the education that you need to have successful outcomes, and then in the end, enjoying the ride.
Come on, share your unique gifts with the world.
Yeah. Tina, thank you so much. I always enjoy our time together, and taking time during harvest, which is a busy season, is no small feat. So I really appreciate you taking the time for me too.
Sarah, thank you for everything you're doing. I love this podcast. And thank you for educating people, for having these complex conversations, sharing these conversations with the world, and really just being a voice for the plant.
And Tina, before we close, I have a few questions for you for our listeners. Where can they find your products? How can they find you on social media? And what should they do if your flowers are not at their favorite dispensary?
Well, first off, DM me. So direct message me at Moon Made Farms on Instagram. I answer my own direct messages. And please go to our website, www.moonmadefarms.com, where we have a listing for all of the dispensaries that we work with in California, the dispensaries and the delivery services, of which you will see there really aren't that many. We would love to find more representation throughout the state. So if you are listening here and you're a dispensary or delivery owner or manager or somebody that wants to get in touch, please reach out to me. And I also love doing events. I love connecting with the good people about this plant. This plant's a great connector, after all. So let's connect.
And if you go to your dispensary that's closest to you and you find that Tina's not there, but with your wallet, ask for your favorite farmers. Ask them to carry Moon Made and let them know why, because these retail locations value your opinion. Let's get some more sun-grown cannabis out there that's grown with love. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Sarah.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sarah Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sarah on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsarah.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.